You know what's funny about betrayal? It never comes from strangers. It never comes from your enemies. It always comes from the person you never thought to protect yourself from. And in my case, it came from the one person in this world I would have taken a bullet for. My own brother. I want you to really sit with that for a second, before I even get into the details of what happened. Because I need you to understand the kind of relationship I thought we had before I tell you how completely he shattered it. And I need you to understand just how deep that wound went. Because what I did next, what I planned, what I executed, and how I finally walked away, is something I've never told anyone in full until right now. So grab whatever you're drinking, get comfortable, and let me take you back to where this story really begins. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm the older sibling. I'm 3 years older than my brother. Let's call him Derek. Growing up, Derek was my shadow. Literally everywhere I went, he wanted to come. Every friend I made, he wanted to meet. Every hobby I picked up, he wanted to try. And I never minded. I loved it, honestly. I was proud to be his big sibling. I introduced him to my friend groups. I taught him how to talk to people, how to carry himself, how to be confident. I spent years building him up because that's what you do for the people you love. When I was 23, I met someone. Her name was Priya, and I know people throw the word perfect around all the time, but she genuinely was everything I had ever wanted. She was smart. She was funny in this effortless way that made you feel like the whole room lit up. She was kind. She was driven. We clicked immediately in a way I'd never experienced before. Within 6 months of dating, I knew she was the person I wanted to build a life with. I was serious about her. Dead serious. And Derek knew this. He watched our entire relationship grow. He came to birthday dinners with us, joined us on group trips, was at every family gathering where Priya came. I talked to him about her constantly. I told him about our future plans, conversations we'd had about where we wanted to live, whether we wanted kids, what we were building together. He was the first person I told when I started saving up for an engagement ring. He was my person, my built-in best friend. At least that's what I believed. Priya and I had been together for just over 3 years when everything started to feel slightly off. And I want to be honest here because I think it's important. I noticed something shift in her energy, but I told myself I was imagining it. She seemed a little more distracted, a little more on her phone, a little more distant in ways I couldn't quite name. When I brought it up, she told me she was just stressed about work, and I believed her because I had no reason not to. I trusted her completely. Then about 2 weeks after I first noticed the shift, I got a message. Not a call. A message. From a mutual friend of ours who said, and I remember these words like they're burned into my brain. Hey, I don't know if you know this, and I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, but I saw Priya with your brother last Saturday night. They were at a restaurant across town. It didn't look like a friendly dinner. I remember sitting there reading that message and genuinely not processing it. Like my brain just refused to accept the information. I read it 3 more times, then I sat in complete silence for probably 20 minutes. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't even sad. I was just hollow. I didn't confront either of them right away. I know some people would have, but I needed to know the full truth before I blew up my entire life. So I started paying attention. I started noticing things I had been too comfortable and too trusting to notice before. Derek was texting more than usual and angling his phone away from me. Priya had started logging out of iMessage on her laptop, something she had never done before. Little things. But when you're looking, you see everything. About 10 days after I got that message, I had my confirmation. I won't go into every detail of how I found out, because honestly, that part of the story still makes me feel sick. But I will say this. It had been going on for almost 2 months. 2 months of my brother and the woman I was planning to propose to sneaking around behind my back. 2 months of looking me in the face every day and lying. I confronted Priya first. I waited until I was calm enough to have the conversation without falling apart. And then I sat her down and I asked her directly. She tried to deny it for about 4 seconds, and then she just broke, started crying, told me she was sorry, that she hadn't meant for it to happen, that it had started as nothing and spiraled. I asked her how long. She told me. I asked her if she had any feelings for him. She paused too long before answering, and that pause told me everything. I told her we were done. She cried more. She asked me if we could talk more, work through it, go to counseling. I told her there was nothing to work through. I was done. Then I called Derek. And here is the moment that still haunts me when I let myself think about it. When I called him and told him I knew, he didn't even really deny it either. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, and I quote, "I'm sorry, it just happened. I didn't plan it. It just happened. 3 years of my relationship, 2 months of sneaking around, my engagement ring fund sitting in a savings account, and it just happened." I hung up without saying another word to him. Now here's where the story shifts, because you probably think the worst part is over. You'd be wrong. The worst part came next, when I turned to my family expecting the one thing you always expect from family, their support. Instead, I got a masterclass in disappointment. My mother called me that same evening. I don't know who had gotten to her first, Derek or Priya or both. But she called me, and within 30 seconds of the conversation, it became very clear which side of this she had landed on. She told me she was sorry this happened, that she knew it was painful, but that I needed to understand that these things happen when people are young. She said Derek felt terrible. She said Priya felt terrible. She said holding on to anger wasn't going to help me move forward. Move forward. That phrase. As if I was the problem. As if my devastation was the inconvenience in this situation. My aunt called the next day with basically the same speech. Then my cousin. Then my dad pulled me aside at a family dinner I probably should not have attended and told me quietly that family is forever, that I should find it in my heart to eventually forgive Derek and that relationships come and go. He looked almost uncomfortable the whole time he was saying it, like he knew it was wrong but said it anyway. Not one person in my immediate family said, clearly and directly, "Derek was wrong. What he did was a betrayal and we are on your side." Not one. What they said instead, in various ways, was, "Get over it. Don't make this into something bigger than it is. Don't let this ruin the family. You'll find someone else. I want you to understand something. I was not acting unhinged. I was not showing up at people's houses screaming. I was not blowing up group chats. I was quietly, devastatingly heartbroken and asking my family to acknowledge what had been done to me, and they couldn't even give me that. I sat with all of that for about 2 weeks, and somewhere in the middle of those 2 weeks, something changed inside me. The grief started solidifying into something else, something focused, something that said, "Okay, if no one is going to take this seriously, then I will handle this myself." Not with chaos, not with scenes, but with cold, deliberate intention. I made a decision. I was going to leave. Not just the situation, not just the relationship with Priya. I was going to physically remove myself from this entire ecosystem that had failed me so completely. I had been thinking about relocating for work reasons for a while. There were better opportunities in a city about 4 hours away. And I had been holding off because of Priya, because of my family, because of all the roots I thought I had. Well, those roots had just been ripped up for me. So I started planning quietly. I reached out to a professional contact I had in the other city and asked if that opportunity we'd discussed 6 months ago was still on the table. It was. I had a formal offer within 3 weeks. I accepted it. I signed a lease on an apartment. I started packing my life in boxes whenever I was home alone. I told no one. And then the revenge piece. Because, let's be honest, that's part of why you're here, and I'm not going to skip it. Derek, in the weeks after everything came out, had been doing this thing that I can only describe as reputation management. He'd been quietly telling people in our social circle his version of events. This softened, self-sympathetic version where he had developed feelings and struggled with it, and ultimately couldn't help it. He was painting himself as someone who had been helpless against emotion, rather than someone who had spent 2 months deliberately lying to his sibling's face, and people were buying it because he was charming and people wanted a reason to forgive him. He also, I found out through the grapevine, had begun officially dating Priya. Like, publicly. They had apparently decided to give the relationship a real shot now that it was out in the open. The audacity of that alone still makes my jaw tighten even now. Here's what I did. First, the professional piece. Derek had been using me as a professional reference for years. I had recommended him for things, vouched for him, opened doors. Nothing dramatic needed to happen there. I simply reached out to 2 people in his industry who had asked me about him in the recent past, and quietly, professionally, withdrew my recommendation. I didn't badmouth him. I didn't fabricate anything. I just said that things in my personal life had shifted, and I was no longer in a position to speak to his character. In professional circles, that kind of withdrawal from a previously enthusiastic reference speaks volumes without you having to say a word. Second, his version of events. He had been so careful to control the narrative in our social circle, but he had forgotten something important. I have receipts. I had screenshots. I had dates. I had specifics. I had things Priya had told me during our breakup conversation that directly contradicted what Derek was saying publicly. I didn't post them online. I didn't send mass texts. I simply had a few quiet one-on-one conversations with people I genuinely cared about in that circle, told them the full and accurate version of events, and let them make their own decisions. Within a month, his carefully constructed narrative had a lot of cracks in it. Third, and this is the one that I think hit him the hardest, the move itself. I had kept my plans completely secret from everyone in my family. I had gone to family dinners. I had answered calls. I had been present and functional and given zero indication that anything was coming. And then, 1 week before my move date, I sent a group message to my family. Just a simple, calm message that said I had accepted a new position in another city, that I was relocating in 7 days, and that I was excited for the next chapter. I included my new work contact information. I said I hoped everyone was well. That's it. No anger, no guilt tripping, no list of grievances, no tearful goodbye requests. Just a clean, composed, here is what's happening message. My phone exploded. My mom called immediately and wanted to talk about whether I had really thought this through. My aunt texted asking why I hadn't mentioned this sooner. Derek actually had the nerve to call me and ask if this was because of what happened, like it was a tantrum rather than a fully planned, professionally motivated decision that he had admittedly accelerated. I let those calls go to voicemail. I answered none of them that night, because here's the thing. For weeks, they had been telling me to move on, and I did. Literally, I moved on, and somehow that was a problem. Moving day came and went. My new co-workers helped me settle in. I found a gym I liked, a coffee shop that became my morning spot, a neighborhood I genuinely fell in love with. I built a life in a new city with intention, and without the weight of people who had chosen comfort over loyalty. In the months that followed, I had some contact with my family, but it was different. Limited, civil, but boundaried in ways I had never maintained before. My mom and I spoke on the phone every couple of weeks. The conversations were surface level, and that was fine. I wasn't performing closeness I didn't feel. Derek reached out twice in the first 3 months after I moved. The first time was a long voicemail that, I'll be honest, I only listened to once. He talked about how he never meant to hurt me, how he hoped we could rebuild eventually, how Priya and he were serious and he wanted me to be part of his life. I did not call back. The second time was a short text that just said, I miss you, man. I hope you're okay. I left it on read for 2 days and then replied with, I'm good, take care, because that was all I had for him. What people don't tell you about this kind of betrayal is that the grief isn't just about the relationship you lost. It's about the version of your family you thought you had. It's about realizing that the story you told yourself about who your people were and how they would show up for you was, at least partly, a story you made up. And that kind of grief is slower and quieter, and in some ways, harder to explain to people than the obvious heartbreak. But here's what else I want to say, because I don't want to leave this story in a dark place, and also because it wouldn't be the full truth if I did. The distance gave me clarity I could not have gotten any other way. When you physically remove yourself from an environment that has been quietly diminishing you, you start to notice how much mental and emotional space you were using just to manage everyone else's comfort. How much of yourself you were compressing to fit into rooms where you were never fully seen. I had been doing that for years, not just in the crisis, but for a long time before it. I had been the fixer, the reliable one, the one who showed up, the one who kept things smooth. And the moment I needed someone to show up for me, the silence was deafening. Starting over in a new city is hard. I won't romanticize it. There are nights that first year where I sat in my apartment and just sat with how alone it all felt. But there is a specific kind of peace that comes from knowing that every person in your life now is someone who chose you without obligation. Every friendship I built in that new city was built from scratch, and that meant it was honest. There was no history, no family politics, no tangled loyalties, just people who liked who I was and wanted to spend time with me. I also want to tell you about something that happened about 8 months after the move. My mom came to visit me. Just her. She flew in for a long weekend, and we spent 3 days together in my new city, and it was the most honest time we had spent together in years. On the second evening, over dinner, she looked at me and said, I think I handled all of this wrong. I was so focused on keeping the peace that I forgot to actually be your mother. She didn't say it dramatically. She said it quietly, almost like she was just thinking out loud. And I think I needed to hear it more than I realized, because I cried more that night than I had in months. I told her I wasn't interested in relitigating everything. I told her what I needed going forward was to feel like she was in my corner, even when that was uncomfortable, even when it meant acknowledging that Derek had done something genuinely wrong. She nodded. We talked for a long time that night. It wasn't a perfect resolution, and it wasn't a movie moment, but it was real, and it moved something. My relationship with Derek is still essentially non-existent. Not because I'm holding a dramatic grudge. I've genuinely processed a lot of this, and I'm not sitting around in a rage about it. But because when I look at the reality of what happened, what I lost was not just a relationship with Priya. What I lost was the version of Derek I thought I knew. The person I built up, defended, championed for years, and trusted completely. That person, as it turns out, never quite existed the way I imagined him. And I don't have the desire to build a new relationship with the real version. Maybe that will change one day. But today, it hasn't. And I'm not going to force it. Priya and Derek are still together, from what I understand. Someone mentioned it in passing a while back, And honestly, my reaction to that information surprised even me. I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even satisfaction. Just nothing. Which I think means I'm actually healed, not just coping. And as for me, I'm genuinely good. Better than I was. I've been on dates. I've made friends who feel more like chosen family than a lot of my actual family ever did. I have a job I'm proud of in a city that challenges and excites me. I built all of that after the worst betrayal of my adult life, and that means something to me. I want to close with this, because I think it's the actual point of this whole story. When people in your life tell you to move on, what they often mean is, please stop making us uncomfortable with your pain. They're not actually thinking about your healing. They're thinking about their own ease. And when you comply with that, when you swallow it down and pretend everything is fine for the sake of keeping the peace, the only person it hurts is you. I moved on, but I moved on entirely on my own terms. I moved on by first acknowledging the full weight of what happened, by refusing to minimize it, by quietly ensuring there were real consequences for people who thought there would be none, and by building a life that had no room in it for relationships that would betray me like that again. I didn't burn anything down. I didn't make scenes. I didn't beg anyone to choose me. I just packed my life into boxes, drove 4 hours away, and started over. And honestly, best decision I ever made. If you're watching this and you're in the middle of something similar, someone you loved betrayed you, the people who were supposed to protect you are asking you to be small about it, I just want you to know, you don't have to perform forgiveness you don't feel. You don't have to stay in a room where no one takes your pain seriously. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just leave. Quietly, deliberately, and on your own terms. And if they tell you to move on so completely, so intentionally, so unapologetically, that they spend the next decade wondering why the room feels emptier without you. Thank you for being here for this one. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment below. If you've been through something similar, I want to hear your story. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. There's a lot more where this came from. I'll see you in the next one.